I could ask you to move over here so you can pick up the audio better, that would be great.
Okay.
You can bring it here.
All right. We'll see where he ends up.
So I have to talk loud enough for this to hear from behind?
It should hear
in front?
It should be fine.
Well, right now we're stuck on the power spike.
Okay, you know, we could all come a little closer. Slide that whole table closer, everybody can hear.
So at this point, we'll not be demonstrating action.
And since coaches and referees are such friends with each other, it's good that we're a little closer. I'm going to start out by saying that I don't have a definite idea myself of what right-of-way needs to be. Okay? It doesn't matter to me whether it's called one way or another. Okay? I have to deal with the way it's being called. Okay? So I take the highest level, okay, the stuff that I see at the international level, and I say, this is the way I see things being interpreted, and this is the way I have to coach. Doesn't matter to me whether I think that's right or wrong. It only matters to me that that's the way it is, because I have to have my athlete perform in that arena. Okay? So there may be times where I don't necessarily believe that that's actually right of way, but it doesn't matter because that's the way it's being interpreted. Make sense? So I'm going to focus on three things that I think that I found important just recently or over the past bunch of years, and three things that I think that referees have a little bit of difficulty. The first one is a slow approach and an attack into that slow approach. An athlete coming forward, looking for a moment to finish their attack. And seeing that moment when the other person makes a step lunge, an advanced lunge, and trying to finish into it. In my mind, and this is the way I see it called most of the time, is that if one person's coming forward with the intent to see when the other person starts, and the other person starts, and you finish, they started, so it's their attack. If you could start a little bit ahead of theirs, like right when they stop, it's a little bit different. If you're starting when they stop, okay, it's yours. But if you start after they begin their step, and it's not just the step, it's not just the arm, but it's definitely not just the arm, okay? I put a little bit more priority, and I see a little bit more priority on that action being on who starts the step first, okay? So if there's approach coming here, and there's a step, stop, step, stop, step, stop, and this starts and this finishes, this is always going to be the attack for me. If I'm coming forward with intent, my intent is to go advance, advance, lunge, and hit you. I see it as being this way. If I start with energy, with intent, with some speed, there can be a few steps forward. There's no moment for me to make an attack into that. Even if it's a little bit compound with your hand, it's still the intent from this side is to make that attack. And I don't see very often the attack into preparation being called against that. But I do see it called a lot with the step, stop, ba-bam. So we have step, 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 and then the attack. And in women, it's a little bit more clear than men because women are a little choppier. Okay, men sometimes a little harder. Men are a little bit smoother with the action, but the women are coming forward and it's bop, 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 it starts and then you finish. Even if this arm gets out first, gets out a little bit ahead, the attack is starting. It's not who gets their arm out faster. Okay? So if the attack comes from this side, that's the way I'm going to call it. And I think we have trouble seeing that a lot. If there's that moment where I'm approaching and you stop and I finish, you haven't started, you've only stopped. But if I'm coming forward and you get to take that step and then I try to finish, you've taken that step. I've seen that step and I go, oh, that's my moment. Well, then the step was first. I don't know why it gets called that way with an advanced lunge as opposed to just a lunge. Because if a lunge just happens, more often than not, it's called the attack from the right. If an advanced lunge happens, it's called the attack from the left. Okay? It's kind of weird. I really don't care why. Okay? I just know that that's the way it's called. Okay? And I go to enough events, junior, cadet, the senior World Cups. I go to all of them and I see that pretty consistently, that being what's called. And maybe it's because the like you can figure that if a person's stepping forward, if I can do an advanced lunge into you and hit you and there's two lights on, probably I started. Or it grabs the referee's eye. There's an advanced lunge. So it looks like nobody does a counterattack with an advanced lunge. So maybe the referee feels that. I don't know. I don't ask too much about it. All I know is that's the way it happens. And that's what I have to deal with. And I think that when when it trickles down to us, we have to award stuff the way it's awarded at that level, since eventually all of our athletes are going to fence at that level. When it was the opposite, where nobody ever gave that advanced lunge into attack, and somebody gave this attack, the long attack, the whole time, I was a proponent of that. That's what they're going to call, that's what we have to call. So I'm going to adjust for that. Again, because all that matters to me, it's not all that matters to me, but mostly all that matters to me is winning. Okay, and if that's what it is to win, then that's it. So that was one of the areas that I wanted to talk about. I'll give you all three, and then if you have some questions for me, I don't have a huge amount to say, just these three things. The attack stops, like what we used to call the repost with distance. Now it's the attack, no, attack. That's what you call it now, right? Okay. So, attack, no, and attack. If nothing happens, if I get away from you, I don't move my hand, I step away, you finish, and I go. You land, and in foil, like the saber's got that front foot landing, and then the arm. If the front foot lands, the attack ends. Foil, you get a little bit more of a moment there. The front foot gets to land, and the arm can keep going. It's not as precise as it is with saber. So there's a little bit of room. But if I get away and I go, it's mine. If I get away and I look for the blade and the other person disengages and finishes and then I go, then it's this way. The attack from the other side. I don't get to get away and look for the blade, have the person avoid the blade, hit me, and then go after. Okay? That's going to be called against me. Okay? Because the person they're doing a disengage. So even if you were like trying to maybe analyze it, this attack, say the attack ended, this person looked for the blade, you did a disengage, and then you went, you could think of it that way if you wanted. But if I land, you look for the blade, I disengage and hit, and then you come at me, it's going to be interpreted as my surge, your hit. Okay? So, and I think sometimes we're seeing more of a stop than there is. It's got to be a real stop. It can't be sort of a stop. It has to be a stop. To get away and go, the other person kind of has to stop. Not sort of stop, not slow down, not... Which side? The attack, the person coming forward. They got to stop. They have to finish the attack, or they have to actually stop it to go, but it can't be kind of just slow down. That still goes to the attack. So there was that. And then my last thing is the Kora Kora. They got rid of the warning for Kora Kora. Last year, I don't know if you guys saw the World Championships, watched the video from the World.
16 minutes before finalists, please report to the awards area. Please report in for much more weight than 60 minutes oil.
The Russians in particular took advantage of no kora-kora, okay? They closed the distance fast, they remised quickly, they didn't give the other person a chance to repost, and I think it was a point where the referees hadn't started to call kora-kora to avoid the touch. They had stopped calling kora-kora, and there wasn't something else that they were calling with it. So it made the bouts kind of weird. If you watch the bouts, you'll see it. You'll see that closing. So I think we have to be more diligent now to say kora-kora to avoid the repost. In my opinion, it was much simpler before when it was just kora-kora because it was less subjective. Two people hit each other, one person was, there's a certain amount of subjectivity in that, but not very much. Now it's even more. Now you have to determine do they bump into the person to avoid being hit. How do you determine if the person was doing it to avoid being hit? But you can, but you have to watch for it more and more. And I think if we don't start doing it, it ruins fencing a little bit. There's not going to be that back and forth. People are just going to keep coming in and closing distance, and you're not going to see any good action. Maybe I'll throw one more thing out there that I see is that we call halt much later than they call halt at competitions. Okay, we allow the bout to go on. It's all messy in there, jabbing and stuff. We allow it to go on very long. I originally felt like it was good for our athletes because they would get that. They were good at when the distance got close, they would get the touch. That was my original thought. And then I have an athlete who's pretty good at doing that. Who's pretty good at closing the distance and making a touch. And what I realized was happening was she was doing it so much here, and we were letting it go so long that she was able to use that, and she didn't learn to do the counter move. She depended on that close of distance, and she used it too much, and she didn't learn the counter repost. So it was really hurting us by doing that rather than helping us. So I think it's important that we don't have to do everything that they do at international competitions, but that is the highest level. And there has to be a trickle down from what they do to what we do. I think when you, what point you call a halt, when you can't, when there's no action going on, when it's two people just kind of jabbing at each other, right at that point. It's just like bop, 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 like that. Yes, I know. Yeah. Somebody, yeah. But it's,
somebody will say it's my opportunity to score a touch.
But you have that rule about not being able to follow the action. So if there's a point where if you say I'm not able to follow the action anymore, then that's it. But because before, when there was a kora-kora rule, I felt like you were told not to call halt so soon, which kind of forced a kora-kora because it would get so close that eventually people would bump into each other. It's kind of created a situation where you had to give more kora-kora because you wanted the bout to go longer. So it's a tough one. I know that what I see there, what I see here, that was one of the issues. But I think it's not that much. I think overall it's pretty similar. Because years ago it was much different. When there was the long attack, we were giving it, we were calling attack into preparation too much. And now I think it's not very far off. What we expect of our referees here and what the referees call is pretty similar to what's being called around the world. I think sometimes we look and we try too hard to see attack into preparation. I'm pretty lenient on the, like if someone's coming forward with intent, even if the arm is a little back, I'm still going to let the other person, I'm going to have the person who has the intent, who's coming forward, who aggressively wants to hit, and if my athlete, who I would makes an attack with an advanced lunge into it, but this is aggressive from this side. I'm not going to argue with you as long as that person had the intent.